All right, welcome to the inaugural episode of the Golden Glory podcast, a bi-weekly show that focuses on how the player impacts MMOs in areas of crafting, economy, and conquest. We're all about discussing ideas, asking hard-hitting questions, and highlighting interesting aspects in MMOs. Our focus for the foreseeable future is the upcoming MMO from Artcraft Entertainment, Crowfall. This is episode 1. We are broadcasting live on Tuesday, January 27th, 2015. Golden Glory brings back together a team of people that have worked together on past projects that have unique and overlapping skills and interests. You may recognize some or all of them, especially if you are or were a WildStar fan. Without further ado, let me introduce the G&G team and have them tell us a little bit about themselves. First, we have Onrez. Watch your gold, because he'll figure out the best way to take it.
Hi, everyone. I'm James, also known as Onrez. And ever since I found myself more interested in getting the coins in Mario Brothers than actually completing the levels, I've always kind of gravitated toward the wealth acquisition side of all the games I play. And as I played and got more addicted to MMOs, the desire to be wealthy enough to challenge the developers' designs of their game and push around the auction house and hell, maybe even bankrupt some NPCs, it's always just been my focus. Whether it's sinks and faucets, exploits, but only in a research point of view, of course, and any other metagame mechanics that really help segment econ players, just like the PV ladders separates, PvP players, have always just been, what I look for and, what I'm excited to talk about. But next we have Lethality, the Trade Master, the crafting guru and sandbox virtual world enthusiast.
Wow. I don't know if I can live up to that. Thanks, Onrez. Yeah, I'm Lethality, otherwise known as Bill, and some of you may know me from Ask a Jedi or maybe over at ZAM, but I'm a big proponent of virtual worlds, and I really believe that sandbox systems really can contribute more to or as much as any sort of handcrafted story-driven content. I think they can go hand in hand, but really the gameplay, I really think that sandbox systems are the way to go. And I think no area is more critical to this than the non-combat roles in these games of the crafter and the merchant. So my philosophy for MMO developers is to make a crafting system for players that love crafting, not for players that hate it, which seems, all too often to happen. So with that, we have Airwolf, the virtuous hero. He likes to focus on how player-driven game systems help him achieve victory on the battlefield.
All right. Hey, everybody. My name is Mike, also known as Airwolf. And he's right. I do like to see how the different systems play together. For example, if I look at crafting per se, I want to know how crafting is going to affect me on the battlefield. Is it going to help me win? I want to look for those chances to be heroic on the battlefield. I want to go out there and win for my team, my guild. And so I will be as into crafting and economy as I need to be in order to win. So for me, I like to look at how all these systems work together and how they balance. And of course, in this game, it definitely looks like that's what they're trying to do. Those of you that know me may know me from some of the Guild Wars 2 content I created back in the day. You also might know me from WildStar. I was the owner and administrator for WildStarFans.net, and I also hosted the Planet Nexus cast. I also, from time to time, write for MMORPG.com as well. And last but not least, we have Sarkan, the completionist. He's guiding the world on how to collect, achieve, and complete it all. Gotta do it all.
Hey all, I'm Franklin, aka Chief Sarkan. I am the completionist when playing games. I'm the guy that spends his time making sure I've collected every recipe, pet, mount, completed every achievement that I can. This requires a deep knowledge of how it all connects together, and I will spend an inordinate amount of time collecting this knowledge by doing stuff like crafting every variant of a recipe just to make sure I understand how the system works. Vanguard Saga Heroes was a prime example of this. This obsessive gathering of knowledge requires a lot of data, and some of you may know me from my spreadsheets in Eve and Rift, my guide writing for the Secret World and WildStar, and articles and reviews here on MMORPG.com and WildstarFans.net, where I share that data. Happy to be part of the GG team. Let's get on with the show. So, the bottom line is, why did Golden Glory say Crowfall? Well, J. Todd Coleman, Crowfall's creative director, stated, "The heart of the Crowfall design lies in the marriage of two gaming systems, a system for strategic territorial conquest, and a system for player-driven crafting and economics. Like a proverbial yin and yang, these two systems have very different and often competing design goals, but each really shines only in the presence of the other." Well, this statement really reflects the focus of the Golden Glory podcast and captured our attention. So let's discuss it. What made us individually excited is really what I want to know. So let's start with Airwolf. What made Crowfall exciting for you?
Yeah, so it's very interesting because I remember when, and those of you in chat as well, live here, you probably remember when you first saw the Play to Crush page go up, right? And I kind of casually watched the bold proclamations that were made on this page about how, you know, they wanted to make something different. And so I was kind of casually watching. But then when what really kind of grabbed my attention is when I found out who was really involved with the game. And really my initial interest began with that because I know some of the projects that, for example, Raph Koster had worked on. And so to me, when I started reading about how much player impact there was in the game, how players decide what's happening in the game world. Now, I mean, I love theme park games, right? I love theme park MMOs, nothing wrong with that. But what happens is this cycle where you're kind of sitting around waiting for devs to bring out the next patch so you have more stuff to do. Where in Crowfall, the emphasis really seems to be on what the players are doing in both crafting and economy, and then also out on the battlefield with the territorial conquest. All of a sudden, like, everything that I do in game really kind of matters. And to me, I think that's something that's been missing in a lot of games, is the idea that as a player, there are things I can do that'll make a difference to those other players. So that's really kind of what initially got my attention on Crowfall.
Yeah, I think that's. I think you hit on a lot of the points for me as well. When that Play to Crush first went up, you know, in the way that it was presented in almost a manifesto of sorts, you know, I think it spoke to a lot of players, and I'd be curious to know maybe where does that skew in the age bracket. But I know that a lot of those things were missing from recent games. I think the pendulum for a long time had swung to. The theme park, this sort of accessibility type of game, and I think there's a trend back the other way. So when I heard who was involved, Gordon Walton, along with J. Todd Coleman there, Gordon was key back in the day in his roles for Ultima Online and on Star Wars Galaxies and then on Star Wars: The Old Republic even, which is a different discussion, but. And then hearing that Raph Koster was also involved, collaborating on designs for not just crafting and economy, but some other game systems, I just knew that, I think way more than nostalgia. I think that those guys revisiting some really good ideas from systems in the past, using sort of everything we've learned in the last 10 years, I think probably could make for something really special. So that's when I really tuned in and I'm super excited to see what happens with it.
Yeah, I think what really grabbed it for me, just like you said, the emphasis on crafting that matters, you affect the battle sphere, the hooks and things have been missing for a long time. And when they talked about the advantage and disadvantage system layered on top of that player-driven economy with actual item loss, I was like, oh my God, this is just such a huge potential. Because how long have we been seeing games that crafting is just a sideline it really doesn't matter to the overall systems,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody ever loses any items. So it doesn't matter how good you are at making something. Once they've got it, they've got it. Whether it's from a drop, it's from, it's made, it's from a quest. If it's the best there is, it's just kind of done. And to me that was like, oh wow, they're saying we're gonna matter, we're gonna have a word, we're gonna have an effect, and the ability to work hard, set a name for yourself as either a crafter or a player, because you're affecting the whole world, not just one piece of it. That really just screamed to me that says, I got to dig into this deeper.
And let's be honest, I was the last of this group to really go to drink the Kool-Aid and go all in. Not because I didn't read and I wasn't interested. Maybe I'm the more emotional of the four. Maybe I wear my crafting heart on my sleeve, and I feel like I'd been burned so far so recently. But to hear the rest of you guys ongoing be so interested, engaged in it, to be honest, I had to do a second and third look. My first look was interesting, and I put it on the side, like, well, it could be. I hear a lot of could be's. But to be honest, to see people that I respect their choices and their interests taking another look and a third look at it finally brought me back to the table. And then the article, just kind of pushed me over the edge about crafting, and we'll get into it right now. But when I read it, it made me feel both nostalgic and excited. I think the phrase is extalgic. I just made that up, trademark. It had me feeling that it finally mattered that I cared and I could spend effort. And if I wanted to blow 6 or 8 hours on just getting good at crafting, it meant something other than just emptying my bags like in a lot of other games. And when I read the article with Blixdev, I honestly felt that he'd been reading my Twitter DMs for the last couple of years. So the quote, "Crafters need to be able to craft unique items, explore new recipes, profit from the results of this exploration, and create customized items for all styles of play." If they can pull that off, they will have an active player in me for a really long time. And as a personal shout out to Blixdev, stay out of my personal Twitter account, you hacker. Because I swear to God, that is what I've been saying to myself and anyone who won't block me because of my rants for the last couple of years.
Look at it this way. You've been writing a design document 140 characters at a time. So.
That's right. I noticed in chat a couple other folks have mentioned things that caught their eye. I noticed one looks like Nicholas Lionwriter says, "I like the Game of Thrones fantasy theme as sort of a basis of an MMO." Now, I have a confession to make. I haven't really watched that show much. Any of you guys watch Game of Thrones at all?
I do not. I must admit.
Yeah,
I may have to do some research. It is on Netflix, right?
The books are awesome, though. I mean, if you travel a lot, just grab the books and grind them through. I'm one of the old ones. I still enjoy the books better than the live show, but that's.
Yeah, and then there was another one here too.
The political structure.
Political structure, yes.
Yeah. That has me just going. Could I be a crafter in town and affect not only the economy, but affect the political direction on where the server's moving on? Where are we going to conquer? Whatever. Because this is in my mind going, so if I just pay off Sarkhan and I pay off lethality, a couple of this, that, and the other, they'll go conquer XYZ, which happens to have a 10 mine that I need. I'm just like, oh my God, the options here are out of control.
That's interesting. This is off topic but on. There's a game out there that's currently in, I believe, pre-release. It's a Korean game called Black Desert, and they have a system there where part of the gathering and the harvesting is you have to gain faction with a given kingdom. So like if it's the open world, but you can't really go do anything. You can't mine ore until you you sort of come to an agreement with that kingdom about being able to. Then you're free in that part of the world to do that. And I almost wonder, it'll be interesting. We know now that it's Crowfall's a territorial type of game. Will there be multiple layers of sort of that thing going on between players? Alliances for resources versus territory. I think it's going to make the two. If you had to look at both ends of the spectrum, the sort of the PvP nature of the game and then the economic nature of the game couldn't be further apart maybe from gameplay styles, but they couldn't go better hand in hand. I don't think it's going to be really neat to watch.
Yeah, I think that the whole territorial thing and the way they described multiple worlds that aren't the same but interrelate, I can see the strong potential with, their description of recipes and how some materials can be used on all of them. Well, what if you're in a territory that doesn't have that resource? You have to establish some kind of trade with another area that does for something that you have that they don't. I mean, the gameplay potentials both from the PvP, the PvE, and the crafting are just exponentially huge depending on how interdependent or how you want to lock somebody down to not get access to those so you control some kind of market is off the charts. It's going to be interesting to see how they do it. We're just speculating at the moment based on what we've seen, but that potential to be important in what you craft, but be controlled and affected by the territories that you also have to control is just huge. So any other thoughts on what's got us excited, or should we shift over to what we have some reservations about? Because there's always a yin and yang in the conversation.
Yeah, let's stop the hub fest and get to the other shoe, just so I feel like we're being open and honest. Right? We're being open and honest with everybody. Absolutely.
But we saw the FAQ they dropped today, right? Isn't that more reason?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, I had to time my work break today specifically to go and oogle over this information drop today. I admit I actually had a video queued up last night. I was going to make it. It was called 20 Questions, and it was 20 specific questions about this game, and half of them were pretty big questions because I didn't know if it was a 3D or isometric. There's like even basic stuff like that. There's so many things I didn't know, and so many things were answered in that FAQ. It's an entirely another podcast to go through them all. But just a comment, I was already somewhat cautiously optimistic about the game, but reading that FAQ today really did push things ahead. The playable centaur, how cool is that? The first screenshot of the in-game environment. So yeah, absolutely. So I will say I would add that as another reason to get excited about the game for sure.
Totally. Plus skills, online, offline, passive, active, everything. But like you said, that's another show, which I'm sure we'll get to.
So Sarkon, I have to ask, if you had to think, where are your reservations at?
So my initial gut feeling when I seen Crowfall and the excitement factor hit that all-time peak, a 12 on a scale of 10, my first thought was, are they going to actually be able to create a crafting community? So even in games where crafting has been phenomenal, there's always that struggle between, can a crafter do it all by themselves? Or is there a need for a community? Or even if there's not a quote-unquote built-in need, a community still gets established, right? That is my biggest fear is, regardless of how this comes about, there's no community. It's still going to feel, to some degree, a single-player game. For me, there hasn't been a game that really had true crafters community. Now keep in mind, there are communities in a lot of games nowadays, but they're not crafting centric, not economic centric. Vanguard Saga of the Heroes was the last one for me where you had a hub of people all working together to achieve something because you needed that interdependency. I couldn't build a house without having a bunch of different trade skills and people that were skilled in that specific item in that trade skill, because you couldn't craft everything, working together to achieve those effects. And so to me, that's my biggest, are they going to be able to do it? And it's all going to be on how they implement the crafting, and is it an all or nothing situation? So. What about you, Mike?
No, I think that's very valid, because again, for crafting, how do you keep it meaningful if you can't, for example, if you can't make a name for yourself in the community with crafting, if what you're crafting is exactly the same as everybody else's, then yeah, I mean, I get it. That's definitely a valid concern. For me, though, my concern kind of goes a little bit different direction. To me, here's the big question. I mean, these are very lofty goals, and this is the time. If you're going to proclaim what your game will do, if you're going to get attention from where you feel the market is lacking, you're going to do things like, hey, aren't you tired of the same old? Hey, I think we need something different, and do a manifesto. So it's very smart marketing, and the big question is, can they pull it off? Can it actually be done? Player-driven systems are insanely hard to manage. I mean, because, for every honest Joe and Susie out there that plays a game, there's going to be 5 other players that'll look for loopholes and exploit the daylights out of them.
Well, so when you say things like that, I feel like you're judging me.
Well, it is about you.
I feel like you're attacking me.
Well, no. Well, here's the thing.
Why do you have to be that way?
Well, okay. So for every honest, excuse me, I didn't mean to say dishonest person. Okay, I meant to say honest. What I want is for noble cause, though. For noble cause. But no, what I want is a system where Onres can be Onres and Joe and Susie can be Joe and Susie, and they can coexist. I want Onres to be able to go and take advantage of every trade deal he can. I want him to exploit the market. I want him to get as rich as he can possibly be, so he's Scrooge McDuck swimming in his money bin. And at the same time, I want Joe and Susie, if they just want to go and make swords, I want them to be able to do that too. So, for me, is finding a way to balance those aspects where the evil player can be evil and the good player can be good, and one is not griefing the other to the point where they can't play the game. That, to me, is the winning formula, and time will tell if Crowfall can actually pull that off.
Yeah, I see. I think the difference there is the on-res exploits typically are just market trend manipulation, where most people associate loopholes and exploits of actually broken mechanics of the game. And I think that's the key for me in your reservation there, is making sure they don't have one, but you still have the opportunity for the on-res one.
Well, even if the loophole is you can't get out of the city without a 12-year-old killing you and taking everything you own.
Well, exactly.
So I mean, basically, what you want is you want that person that has bloodlust to be able to go and enjoy that. I want to go out and cause trouble. I mean, my nickname back in my early WoW days was the Gankadin, because I just had pure joy in going out and killing people. Now, imagine if I could go do that and profit. You better believe I'm going to want to do that, but I certainly don't want to take that honest player that just wants to go in the game and they want to craft and they want to trade. I don't want that person to not be able to play. I'm not saying that they should be able to just become filthy rich without risk. But what I'm saying is, I just hope the system isn't built where it's just too easy to grief people. I hope there's a way that it's balanced, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I perfectly get you.
Yeah, that's a tough one. It really is, because, not that it has to be of a hardcore nature, but, one of the things that I think a system like that, and I'll get to my my reservation in a minute, but the idea that, all right, you would hope that if that crafter needs to go out and get something or be out in the open world and it's super dangerous, then that would mean that maybe it'll sort of foster the idea that, well, maybe I should go out with 2 or 3 people, and and it builds from there. And I think because of the systems that are in the game that are more sort of sandbox driven, between the economy and all those things, I think that is going to have a better chance of fostering that social gameplay than, than some of the some of the games that have recently sort of tried and failed. I think it's just proven time and time again you can't force a social structure or social interaction, but I think having a natural reason to do it, it's kind of like playing tennis and not realizing you're actually exercising at the same time. It's like, yeah, hey, this is good. I'm going to do this. Not realizing that, wow, I'm playing an MMO. I'm going to bring some real players along, and and not looking at it as something that's hindering you, but something that's helping you and is actually fun. But anyway.
Well, I think to add to that point, sorry to cut you off,
yeah.
but I think that the key difference there is for the gankers, there has to be a reason more than collecting bounties or just providing kills to make PvP interesting. Because if there's not some other objective on top of the PvP besides just ganking, there's a lot of people that won't engage. And then there's going to be the other half that says, well, I don't want to work towards anything, I just want to kill people. And it's finding that happy medium. I mean, true, no game is good for everybody, but let's take, for example, Dark Age of Camelot. PvP was about controlling things, and it gave you bonuses, right? As one aspect of it, for example. In this game, hopefully it's centered around resources, and, it's not just about going out and can I kill 50 people today, but it's can I kill 50 people while also maintaining this for the benefit of, my crafters. Get the relationship established between the PvPers, the crafters, the people that just want to do other things in the game. That interrelationship is, to me, needs to be there also.
Right. Yep. Yeah, totally agree. But as far as any concerns I have, I think we've all been around the block with this more than once. New games announced and all the right words are said. And in this case, they definitely came out of the gate with, with the manifesto and the chest thumping. And so for me, I guess the concern is, games go through so much iteration during development. There are systems they have now on paper that are still untested, and through no intention to change some of the plans, they may have to change some of their plans as they get further down the line. And of course, the early followers, us, the fanboys, whoever, will look at that as, they're caving to something, whether that's that's the the masses or whatever we perceive it to be. It's going to be for pure reasons, gameplay reasons that they've discovered. So. Coming out and unless they're a lot further along in development than we know, and I don't think we know anything about that. I think that's the biggest thing is, can they stick to the vision, and is the vision really strong enough to support all the stuff? The systems, I have no doubt, are going to be really strong with everybody that's involved in designing them. But that dynamic that ultimately plays out, that and again, every game in the last few years. It isn't really till 4 to 6 months in you start to see how the long game really starts to play out, and whether that's whether that's content related, whether you just see sort of the play pattern you're going to have to engage in order to to stay engaged with the game. That it isn't until then that you start to notice that. So hopefully they've got the right approach, and all their plans kind of work together. And again, back to my original thing. I think that letting players be the content, and that's exactly what it is with PvP and economics. I think that that is the strongest potential for this game to overcome some of the failures that we've seen over the last decade, or whatever you want to say. It's so here's hoping.
Yeah, I think, like you said, the bravado coming out the gate like this has good connotations and potentially bad when you start getting into the potential of scope creep. What they planned is just bigger than what they end up actually being able to chew off, or they're doing really well, so they decide to add more into it, which they didn't originally plan. So now you got all these systems that are bumping heads against each other because they weren't planned for. So I hope, like you said, they really can stick to the original plan, make it successful, and then go from there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think you guys have all kind of summed up bits and pieces of my concerns kind of quite nicely, but I'll add that I'm just worried that that big tent syndrome will creep in. And what I mean about that is a comment that almost all of you guys have already said is that mechanics or metagame. And for me, metagame is the economy. It's the crafting. When I look at the screenshot that said about character creation and it said hunger resistance, and I'm like, oh my god, that means cooking could be relevant. I think of all these things that I want to do besides go out and just stab, Lord Hammer in the back and rummage through his pockets. The metagames need to have consequences for the choices you make. And just like you don't want to necessarily give your two-handed sword fighter the ability to throw a fireball because it doesn't make sense because he's a fighter and not a mage, I don't want to see the in-game mechanics be, okay, here's everything you can to be really spend some quality time crafting. Or, if you're not excited about crafting, you could do it this way for the non-crafters, and somehow that waters down and impacts, why I was excited about the game. And so that type of creep to, into the metagames, I think it slowly erodes what could be a strong foundation of a type of player base that they've been talking to and at for a while that, to be honest, I don't think have been focused on. And so I do worry a bit that will they spend as much time balancing the profit and loss of the crafting provisions as much as they spend balance on the DPS of each class.
Yeah.
I worry, but I'm always hopeful.
Yeah, I think one of the positives there is we've seen crafting come out as a primary announcement within the first couple weeks of when we knew about the game. I mean, think back to some other recent games, WildStar, Star Wars: The Old Republic. I mean, I don't think crafting ever really came out as a pre-release feature that they talked. I mean, they talked about it, but how long were we waiting for a crafting reveal or dev speak on WildStar? That's not to criticize WildStar. It's just we were focused on that, but that just tells you that crafting is a big deal in Crowfall, and I can't believe that they would come out of the gate like this and do anything less than make it a full-on role that you can play and never see combat, if that's what you want to do. So that does take some, that takes a lot of work, but they would have to address it with this. It's got to be a first-class citizen, just like combat.
Yeah.
So really good discussion so far. I think we should move it on to something Airwolf brought up on the forums, which I think is a phenomenal topic. We're excited, we're having our reservations, but now we need to really think about what would make us say nope to Crowfall. There was a long thread discussion about this, but what do you guys think would make you say, nah, I'm done? And since it was your thread, Airwolf, why don't you start it off?
Me, at this point, I play a lot of different games. It takes a lot for me to go, no, I'm not touching that game. Okay, so for me, here's what it is. You have a game where the players are supposed to make the impact. Player crafting, player-driven economy, player-driven conquest, player, PvP, all that fun stuff. When you monetize a game, monetizing in such a way that takes away the player's ability to impact things. I know pay to win is a cheap phrase that's tossed around a lot, but to me, if the monetization of the game begins to rob the players of actually impacting the world itself, if you're in the battlefield and you lose to somebody and you can immediately tell it's because they spent money, that's where it's gone too far. Or if you're crafting or you're building and you look over and you see someone making way more profit than you, and you can immediately tell it's because they spent money, they went too far. No, I get it. You gotta monetize the game, and we know nothing about the monetization scheme. I know there was a thread on the official forums asking about what people thought, and I thought it was interesting that a couple of the developers voted.
I saw that too when you posted that. I was like going, wow.
Yeah, when the executive producer and the creative director both vote in the poll.
But for different choices.
Well, they voted different choices, but I got to say though,
That cuts
Gordon
it down
Walton,
to 50%, right? If I just
right,
take
but
their
only
two
one of
votes.
them was in first, though. Only one of them was there first, and I just wonder if the second one voted just to kind of throw
Cover
a
the
confusion in
tracks.
there.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
don't know if they knew the vote was public or not. Maybe they did. Maybe they're trolling us all on purpose, which is hilarious if that's true.
Well done. Well
But
played.
but the point is, monetization is very important because it cannot rob the player of the playing the game, creating the impact. So that is my if I perceive now I'm not one of these like internet ragers where as soon as I see something I immediately go, nope, that sucks. I'll look into it, I'll do my homework. But overall, if the monetization of the game robs the player of their impact, or you can tell somebody paid money by what they can do in the game, like I said, I don't mind paying money, but you can tell they bought that. I've got a problem with that monetization. That's probably what would make me say nope, nope, nope.
Yeah,
This game's not
I
for me.
think what to add to your point there, pay to win to me is typically they aim it towards convenience, time, convenience. They're targeting the people that have little time but a lot of money, and expect them to pay for the game for everybody else that has lots of time but no money. And it's that razor's edge of how do you get both kinds of players in the game, and I think monetization fails because they actually do try and get both. When you keep it at just cosmetics or just fluff, people will still spend the money, but like you said, they're not on the battlefield or they're not at a crafting table going, well, he just circumvented the process by just spending 10 or 20 bucks. Why does that make me no longer feel accomplished? To me,
Right.
That's more important than the fact that he bought it. I don't care if he spent money, but if it takes away my sense of accomplishment,
Right.
then I feel cheapened.
Well, if anything, MMOs have taught anybody is that if you give people something to spend money on, they'll spend it, and
Exactly.
they'll spend a lot of it.
Yeah, exactly. Those people aren't doing us any favors by that. Every time we come around to a system, oh, well, that's borderline ridiculous, and then people lap it up. So it's it's kind of a problem that's feeding itself. But I agree with you. That would be a big thing for me too. But the problem is, and we should probably do a show on this, is what does it really mean, and how does it affect the game economy? Which from our perspective would also be pay to win, right? So. That's a big discussion all its own.
All right, well, what about you, Lethati? What's your big nope?
Well, I think I might have touched on it earlier, but I think it can't, crafting and that kind of gameplay has to be a first class citizen right next to combat. They have to go hand in hand, and I believe they will. And this is just my worst case scenario. But because they've come out with what they've said so far. But if it's not a situation where I can be a dedicated crafter and there's deep gameplay for me, whether that's through the actual act of crafting or gathering or researching or something that makes it interesting for me to feel like I'm not missing out on anything, by not spending my nights in the battlefield while I'm working on better recipes for the fighters that are going to come back and hopefully buy the items from me. That really has to be thought through, and I truly believe they will. But if they don't, then it just kind of becomes it's a PvP game, and it actually sounds really awesome. Especially based on what we learned just today. But that's probably not my kind of game. I play, with my abundant time, I try to play some other games that I wouldn't normally play for gameplay, but like just yesterday, the winter alpha, or whatever they're calling it, for Albion Online came online. That's a game that doesn't necessarily appeal to my Twitch or my combat senses, but it has an awesome crafting and player driven world to it. So that's a game where I'm just into the systems, and if Crowfall falls short of providing that same experience where I can dive into the systems as a crafter, then I'm probably depending on how the gameplay turns out, I probably wouldn't be interested in, because I've got enough enough other games that are starting to scratch that virtual economy crafting kind of itch. So, but yeah, Mr. Onres, what are you thinking?
Again, I being last and listening to your guys' points, I feel like you sum up a lot of my concerns. The one thing is that as much as I love anything virtual economy and crafting, but like you said, there are plenty of games out there that have bits and pieces of that. I need to have some sort of, I know this seems odd, but I need to have some lore and immersion to explain why I make the choices I make in a game. I need feedback from the game and from other players, the game to let me know that I did something great or I failed miserably. And the players, I need to be able to look at whether things sell or not. I need access maybe to some mods or maybe some tablet or iPhone stuff, because if I'm all in, I'm all in. And so the problem is I really just need to be, for me to go nope is for me to launch this and say that this is a game that I'll play when I have time versus a game that I'm fully enthralled with. And even me, I do like combat. I mean, I do like to do some questing. I do like to do some exploring. And for me to say the opposite of nope, which is yep, I need it to tick a lot more boxes just in the economy. And I think as we see more about the skills, passive and learn, and the fact that we're not going to have levels, but we're going to actually earn and experience our and work our characters up, as that unfolds, I'm hopeful. But I do worry that those are tough mechanics to balance. And if they don't feel right, I may have to put the brakes on it until maybe until it balances out.
Yeah, I think for me, the big nope factor that comes in is, we've kind of already touched it, but if crafting is just a side activity that so often happens in so many games, because there's no real effect due to the itemization of the game, right? So
yeah,
if the itemization is driven towards the best item comes from this raid boss, which we know happens in so many games, crafting is just something to fill time. Well, when it's that effect, then, like I was saying earlier, there's no sense of achievement for me. There's no sense of accomplishment. And as the completionist, if I don't have something to work towards, even if it's having just every recipe in my tool chest, then what's the point? And with everything they've said so far, I don't think they're going to go that route. But if it turns into that, the whole, you get one item, you got it forever, you never have to replace it because it won't break, it's the best in slot until they come out with a new patch, and now there's this new item you got to work towards. I'm not a gear grind person, and if this game turns into that, I'm done.
I would agree with that. I would say at this point in my MMO journey, I'm ready to do something very different, because it used to be all about getting that one epic weapon, and then you're right, and then what happens 2 months later, 3 months later, 5 months later? Then the next content patch comes out. Then what is everything you've done worth? Nothing. So I'm with you on that. I think that I'm definitely ready for something different than that, for sure.
All right, well, it seems like we've covered a lot of topics. Is there anything else we want to talk about this evening before we get ready to sign off? We're sitting at about 45 minutes.
You guys waved me off on digging into the craziness that is the screens that they shared, which is going to be a loud and forum and Twitch channel craziness when we get to dig into those screens on crafting. So we better save that for next episode.
Yeah, is our next week still called the crafting? Is that what we're still going to call next week's? Is that true?
I think so.
I think you just basically sealed our fate right there. Thanks.
I think I'm so ready to hear Andres talk about what he sees in the system, because I think it definitely is going to lead to a conversation much longer than we have time for. I do though again just want to talk about just for 1 second. I mean, for me, I saw someone in chat earlier talk about they wanted a lion mount, and all I could think about was I'd love to see the centaur try to ride a lion mount. Like, what are you doing?
I can't unsee that. I can't unsee that.
So, I mean, the fact that you've got a four-legged creature, you know, how does a mount work with that? I mean, is it its own mount? You know, so I think that's a very good question. But again, there's so many questions that we still have, and it's by intention. I mean, when you go to the site and it says we're going to play a game, we're just going to give you information piecemeal and kind of let you chew on it. And it's very interesting because you've got all these people coming together into this community that have all kinds of expectations and passions and desires and interests. And it's very interesting watching everybody interact because you've got some people that are filling in their own blanks. They seem to have it figured out more so than what's even been revealed. And you got other people that come from these games so it is very interesting to see the reaction of all of these drops. And slowly but surely, it does seem to be folks are kind of meshing into a core community. And I just wonder if that's the design. Basically, it's kind of like an Auto Trader commercial where the guy stands up there and says, I need a car. And there's 1,000 cars in front of him. And he says, well, I want a red one. And all of a sudden, all these other cars move out of the side. You've got red ones. And you just wonder if that's kind of intentional. Build a core community that is all kind of, all looking for something similar in this game. So that's kind of what I'm wondering about, and over the next few weeks, I'm sure we'll get our answers.
Yeah. Hey, do you want to talk a little bit about the countdown was on the site, day one, and we're only halfway to 0 on it, and so what do we all think that means? What is that day? Is that the day is that launch day? Is that beta day? What is that date?
Actually, I posted on this. What they're going to do on that date, there's actually a post on the forums about this very thing. On that day, they're actually going to unleash their full vision for the game. So what they're doing is, from now and then, they're going to kind of lay out piecemeal different bits of information and then gauging the response. And then on the day that countdown goes 0, is the day that they unleash the vision of the game. Now, they specifically said on the forums that doesn't mean the beta is opening up. It doesn't mean that we're going to be able to download a client or anything. But what it does mean is that everybody will then at that moment be able to make a decision whether or not this is the game they want to play.
Cool. Well, they definitely, what I like about it is they just jumped in with all the fans, and they're encouraging the hype and the discussion, and like you said, that might be part of the design and part of the game plan. But I like it. Everybody was going to do that anyway, so they jumped in and embraced it. Let's pump the hype up with a countdown, with dripping out images and information. So it's pretty exciting, I think. And one thing about Crowfall that, and some other games, I think we're past the era where the only acceptable success is that of which beats WoW in terms of players or monetary success. I think,
mass market.
Yeah, I think we're at a place where developers and studios and publishers are looking at ways. There are plenty of vertical audiences that sit below that I think when managed properly, you can provide and make quite a business out of. And I like to think that's what we're seeing here. So, if a game has 50,000 players, 100,000 players, is that enough? Hopefully now they've found business models, and again, that ropes back around to the free to play or pay to win or all those discussions. But I like it because it means we're more likely to get games that cater more specifically to what we like instead of trying everybody going for broke and trying to capture everybody, and in the end, just they kind of tick off everybody.
Agreed.
I'm saving up my rant powers for next
Yeah,
one.
that's right.
So I'll just I don't want to scare off everyone in chat. So
I
I'm
can't
just gonna
go
sit here quietly.
I can't go more than 45 minutes without some kind of critique, so I apologize.
Well, and that leads us to where I think this is a really good place to end this week's discussion. I think we just have a ton of stuff that we can talk about in the future because we barely even touched on our whole pillars. I mean, we got, crafting, the economy, and the glory. That's what our show is all about, the conquest. So look forward to a whole lot of topics in the near future covering all of that. We're going to be going in depth on all those things. We're going to let Anres rant to his heart's content. We'll have pictures that we're going to talk about because there's the alloy chart, there's the advantages and disadvantages systems that we've seen. We've got the character customization, the character creations that they talked about in the FAQ. I mean, just so many things that this show is going to dig into. So we hope that you come, you hang out with us, and you talk to us again in the near future. You can follow us over at Twitter at Golden Glory PC and on Facebook at Golden Glory Podcast, all one word. And if you want to follow any of our individual hosts, I'll let each one of them introduce themselves or sign off themselves and tell you where you can follow them. Airwolf?
Sure. Again, my name is Mike, also known as Airwolf. The best place to follow me is on Twitter at Airwolf. You can also check out my blog at thewolfden.com. I post thoughts there all the time as well.
Cool. Yeah, you can find me. I'm Bill Lethality at real_lethality at Twitter. That's really the only place I hang out right now. I think there's some more things in the works. So if you're a Star Citizen fan, for instance, you may want to stay tuned.
Yeah, you can find me at the tagline's Econ PvP, or I won't get into that, but we will talk about Econ PvP soon. I can be found at Anrez, at ANHREZ. On Twitter, it's probably the best place to find me. I'm going to start, instead of lurking all the forums, I'll start posting. I've been reading all of your guys' stuff on the forums, and it's been a great read. It's time to come out of the shadows and start spamming you all on the forums.
And finally, I am Chief Sarkhan. Chief_Sarkhan on Twitter is the best place to follow me. I'm also an active streamer right here on MMORPG.com. So if you like what you've seen here and what you like what MMORPG does, please be sure to follow them also. We try and get you news on everything, but Golden Glory is all about the econ and the conquest. So we hope to see you again real soon as we continue the quest for gold and glory. Have a good night.